I know sometimes you're wondering why it takes a little while for us to come on the radio show. Did I really love this song? And I really want to hear a little bit more. And I do want to sing. And I do want to sing.
Tom.
And my wife reminds me I cannot sing. So this is the reason why.
I beg him. I don't remind him. I beg him.
There will be no
like,
singing from this section.
Please stop
here
singing to the intro on the show. Yeah.
You listen to the I Am Real Estate Show with Ray, Sandra, and Danielle. We're here with our designated broker and owner of Indie Realty, Don Geisler. And we thought we'd talk a little bit about closed sales and love letters. And no, I thought we'd talk about fair housing.
Fair housing.
That sounds good? Sounds good, everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think so. The word love letters has kind of become an industry hot button out there. Insider jargon, but people know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to take a step back, though, and talk a little bit about why fair housing came about.
So, and we have this nifty new advisory out here, and discrimination is illegal. And that's what it says right on the top of it.
Yep.
And it's very detrimental to communities when every segment of the population is not being treated fairly. And so we have these protected classes that are entitled to be treated just as well as everybody else, right?
Absolutely.
And a couple of years ago, I think it was now, there was just a massive undercover expose, going on. And I believe it was on the East Coast somewhere. Mm-hmm. And some real estate professionals really got themselves caught up in saying things that were clearly violations of fair housing law, doing things, behaviors that were, and for the most part, these things happen accidentally. I mean, you have to be smart enough to say, my business practice is not to drive this particular segment of the population to this particular neighborhood. I mean, you probably don't deserve to be in the industry if that's where you're at.
And I think sometimes too, it's the client that doesn't understand what fair housing is, who will start down that path, and it's really our job to put a stop to it.
Yeah, and so one of the things I like to talk to my agents about, and whenever I have an opportunity to educate people, is one of the best ways to avoid it is make sure that your business practices are always consistent, right? And sometimes those things will surprise you, right? Because if for example, if your practice is, I insist on somebody getting a pre-qual with a lender before I will put them in my car and show them any houses. Okay. That's my business practice. Well, that needs to always be your business practice. Because then you can't demonstrate that you have deviations from that, because you can find yourself being accused, of treating people differently.
Right. So I selectively, for lack of a better word, profiled you and determined that you are probably not going to qualify based on something that would be a protected class. So I selected you to go get pre-qualified, but I didn't ask my other clients to do that.
And this was very similar to the story that we were heard from a couple years ago as part of the expos. So we've been in a really competitive market lately over the past couple of years, and something that's kind of reared its head again that's come up is what we call the love letter. So I alluded to that, and superficially it sounds wonderful, right? Like, we are in a people business. We want people to get along. We want to give our client, a leg up. Right. But AAR's position, and the attorney's positions are just don't do it. Because once you open up this can of worms that I'm writing this beautiful letter about my client, and it has to do with her, child status, her marital status, her family status, all this stuff to try to win over a seller. And what you've done is you've put everybody in a situation where if that person doesn't get that house, then we legitimately have to question, was there something about this person that caused them to not get the house? So just universally, the love letter is not a really great idea. I had, and when I say things happen innocently, the things that happen innocently is, I was managing over a deal one time, and my agent said she was all excited because they had received the most wonderful love letter that you could imagine from this potential buyer. And they were just so wonderful. And the seller was really impressed. And the seller's answer was, well, I want a letter from everybody now.
Oh no!
I want to know about everybody that's coming in the house. So it's one of those things where people do with the best of intentions, but it's not advised.
How much time did they spend? Danielle, you were the most recent one to go through training to get a license. How much time did they spend with you talking about fair housing?
We spent a lot of time talking about it. We talked about, classifying what kind of situation would be a fair housing violation. We talked about specific examples in every single category because they wanted to make sure that as newer agents that we were going out there protecting our clients and making sure that, like was mentioned earlier, if a seller is trying to say, you know what, I love this house, I'm sad I have to leave it, I want to know who's moving into my house, and so they start putting restrictions on it, we need to be able to step in and say, you can't do that. You don't get to choose who lives in your house. It's a transaction. It's not you choosing this person. If you're not gifting it to someone else, that's not something you're allowed to do.
Right.
I actually have that conversation when I take a listing, and we'll talk about, the different classes that are protected. And I use as an example, we'll go back to Super Bowl. You may be an Eagles fan, but you don't want Kansas City fan living on your street. That's okay, as long as that person doesn't fit any of these other classes. And go ahead and try to prove that. And so we just say, if the money's green, take the money. And actually, when we were presenting multiple offers, I was even uncomfortable with names being on that sheet. It was buyer number 1, buyer number 2, buyer number 3, because we don't want to give the appearance that we gave someone preference based on maybe what their name is.
You don't want to. And people are very serious about it. The industry, the government, everybody is very, very serious about it. But I had to defend one time. Another broker called me, and their buyer got beat out on a property, and he stated that he thought that it was because he was a minority. And then we had to, we always document everything and cross our T's and dot our I's and stuff. But it turned out that this person was using a specific type of financing, and their offer was just, they were asking for concessions at a time where that was difficult. So I felt really bad for that. I mean, I feel bad that there are people out there that feel like it's a possibility that they have to feel that way.
Yeah. And it's probably based on the fact that it's happened in the past. And so we have to hear that. But again, anything we can do to protect our client, regardless of whether it's the buyer or the seller, I think to do things like, if I'm presenting multiple offers, I do a spreadsheet and we compare the financing, the closing date, what, are they asking for concessions? There's so many things that they are and need to look at, but who the person is really is not relevant to the business decision that needs to be made.
We're here right now listening to the I Am Real Estate Show. We're here with Diane Geisler, who is the designated broker and owner of Indie Realty. Just here with Ray, Sandra, and Danielle. We'll be back after the break.